Well, welcome once again, everyone, to our weekly Ag Chat here as part of Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo's weekly chat with you about things going on in our world here at Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, but also trying to give you a little bit of an education and some information on some important agricultural issues in our society. And one of the big topics that I personally wanted to address in these Ag Chats is pollinators. And today, we're going to be joined by Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo to talk about pollinators, who they are, what they are, and their importance in society, and also talk about how you can help pollinators by building your own pollinator garden at home and what goes into making that happen. So today is World Bee Day, so it's a big celebration of one key pollinator, and that's the pollinator most people think about when they think about pollinators is the bee, but there are many others, and Michelle will talk about that in just a minute. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to get on board here, so we'll casually start to prepare and get ready. While I've got you and those of you who joined early and on time, I want to remind you that we'd love to hear your comments and see your comments on our feed. So if you will, on the feed of this event, please type in where you're watching from, and since we're visiting with our friends at the Houston Zoo, why don't you include an emoji of your favorite animal? Your favorite zoo animal. And even if you have a favorite memory of going to the Houston Zoo, include that in there as well. But if you put your questions in there for Michelle, we'll be answering those later in the broadcast here. Also, I'd like to invite everyone, if you can, to create a watch party on your own Facebook page. This information is critical information, as we're going to talk about the importance of pollinators, and we'd like as many people to know about it as possible. So we'll invite you to start your own watch party. It helps on Facebook to generate more views and more people that'll get this important information. In fact, I'm going to turn my head just a moment and start my own watch party on Facebook. So if you're one of my friends, feel free to watch through that, but I'd prefer you start your own. We'll also talk about how you can help the Houston Zoo. Obviously, a lot going on, a lot of attention being paid to what's going on in the world right now and how it's impacting organizations, all nonprofit organizations and all businesses, but in particular, an organization like the Houston Zoo. We'll give you some opportunities throughout the broadcast to understand how you can support the Houston Zoo. So I'll start my own Facebook watch party real quickly. If you'll give me a moment, we'll come back and start our conversation with Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo. There we go. That easy. So we're off and running. And if we're ready to get the party started, I'll pull in Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo and welcome her to our Ag Chat Live here with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Michelle, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, David. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be joining you guys today.
Hey, Michelle, let's introduce yourself a little bit more. Tell me a little bit about who you are and how you came to work at the Houston Zoo.
Sure. So I came to work at the Houston Zoo. I actually volunteered for a few years in college and right here at the Houston Zoo, and I just fell in love with it. And so my degree is in wildlife management, and soon after graduating, I actually landed a dream job here in the carnivore department. So I've been here actually a little over 12 years now, and I currently am a supervisor in the children's zoo. And a few years ago, I actually got the opportunity to become a staff lead as a conservation action specialist in our Creating Wildlife Friendly initiative, Habitats initiative. And that basically focuses on pollinators, birds, and bats. So I've learned a lot about pollinators in the last few years, and I'm just really excited to be sharing some of that information with you guys today.
Well, I appreciate you doing it. And as I mentioned at the start, today is World Bee Day. So we're celebrating one of maybe the most famous of the pollinators. But will you talk to us a little bit about what pollinators are and their importance in our world?
Sure. Pollinators, by definition, a true pollinator is an animal that transfers pollen from one plant or flower to another. So they're super important. That helps to fertilize the plant, but also to have them reproduce to create more plants, fruits, seeds, nuts, all of those wonderful things. So they're really vital to not only just flowering plants, they help contribute to almost 90% of pollination for the flowering plant, but they're just important to overall health of an ecosystem.
So when you talk about, from our perspective, from a Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo perspective, obviously the focus on agriculture. When you drive, especially through the Midwest, and you pass all those farms that are growing corn and soybean and all these products that are so important to us, you actually see beehives set up on those farms. So can you talk specifically about the role that the pollinators play in farming and agriculture and getting food from the farm to our plate?
Absolutely. Pollinators play such a huge role when it comes to crops and fertilizing them, helping them to thrive and create those wonderful foods that we all love. They're actually responsible for pollinating about 30% or 1/3 of all of our crops. So a lot, like you mentioned, but there's, just a lot of wonderful foods out there that we really love, like avocados, bananas, coffee beans, cocoa for chocolate. All of those things are really dependent on pollinators. So as far as agriculture, they're just a huge part of contributing to all of the things that we love as far as food consumption. And it is said that 1 out of every 3 bites of food is directly contributed to pollinators. So that's a lot of food.
That's a lot of food and feeding a lot of people in this country and around the world. I want to remind
Absolutely.
everyone that on Ag Chat today, we're chatting with Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo. We're talking pollinators on World Bee Day. A lot of people are watching already, Michelle, and we've got Jennifer from Sugar Land. We've got Thomas from Houston. We've got Catherine. I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce the name, so I won't say it. We've got viewers from Southern India, all over the place tuning in. So a lot of great information to get out. And Michelle, if you will, you're right there in one of the pollinator gardens at the Houston Zoo. Will you tell us about where you are and what's going on at that specific garden?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, location-wise, we are near the giraffe habitat, specifically the barn you can kind of see behind me. But it is also home to one of our mini pollinator gardens that we have here at the Houston Zoo. We have a little over a dozen designated gardens for pollinators. This one's really great because it has a dual purpose. It actually is a flowering plant pollinator garden, but it also is a browse garden as well. So it's a really wonderful space.
When you look at a pollinator garden like that at the Houston Zoo, the one you have there, I know that your focus is on native species plants, and I want you to talk about that in a minute, but are there also native species pollinators?
Oh, absolutely. It is said that native plants will attract native pollinators. So we absolutely have a nice variety and diversity of native pollinators here.
When you look at that specific pollinator garden there, what are you hoping to attract with the plants in that area?
Oh, just a variety of different pollinators, hopefully. We have currently a lot of bees there, but we definitely have butterflies of all varieties that visit our pollinator gardens, hummingbirds, just a wide array, and some that you don't typically think of as well. But we're hoping to attract any and all pollinators. So
are there some specific pollinators to Houston versus just Texas?
There are. We definitely have some native pollinators to Houston area that are also found in other places, but specifically talking about bees and World Bee Day, we have the bumblebee, which there's a specific eastern bumblebee, honeybee, and we have a mason bee that is pretty specific to the Houston area, along with carpenter bees. So there is quite a few.
We've got Christina who is asking for her 5-year-old son, Christian, what's the best flower to attract bees in this area?
Oh, that's a great question. Really, any flower that is very vibrant, colorful, and will have a lot of nectar. So it can be a wide range of flowers, but they really they're drawn to a lot of bright colors. A lot of them are drawn to the shape of a flower, so kind of the bell shaped or ones that they can get into pretty easy will attract a lot of bees. And then, of course, as long as it has a lot of the great nectar in there, they'll be attracted to that as well.
So I'm going to ask you, do you mind that you've got a much bigger garden behind you in the back there? Yes. Do you mind showing us a little bit over there?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys follow me, we're going to take a little closer look at our garden that's behind us. So we have
Well,
a wide variety of plants here in this garden. So we'll get a closer look and hopefully identify a few of them for you. So we're zooming in now to the very beautiful purple flower plant. This is actually a type of salvia, and it is an Amistad salvia, but there's a huge variety of salvia that our pollinators are attracted to. You can see there's a bee here, if we can zoom in safely. Actually a couple now, but the bees really, really love this salvia. I've seen just so much activity on these plants specifically in the last few days. So again, you can see how they can get right in there and get all the nutrients and things that they're looking for. So they really enjoy the salvia plant. Right next to it is actually a really vibrant yellow. And this is a golden shower spiralis plant. So it's very attractive to pollinators as well. There's a few that you can't really see because our flowering plants are thriving, as you can tell. But just behind us on this side, if we can pan over to the right here, I'll try to point out some stuff. Just behind there, you see that red flower. That is a Turk's cap, and that is very attractive to bees and butterflies. They love those things. And we have them in various places throughout the zoo. And just behind that, you can see the taller tree. That's the mimosa tree. It has kind of the pink fiber optic looking flowers on it. And it's also really great for pollinators. There's a ton you can't see, but those are just a few of the really great ones that we have in here.
I want to remind everyone and thank you all for watching Ag Chat, our weekly conversation here with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo and on Facebook. And this week, special guest with Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo. And I should say, I failed to mention at the start of this that the Houston Zoo is a rodeo grant recipient. The Houston Rodeo has been supporting education programs with the Houston Zoo. We're very proud of that. We're supporting school-based programs and partnerships and project-based learning, as well as field trips. So we're very proud of our affiliation with the Houston Zoo and proud to be presenting this topic today. It's World Bee Day. We're talking pollinators, and again with Michelle Castle. Michelle, one of the things that the rodeo and the zoo have in common is that we really are heavily supported and run by volunteers. I know the volunteer group at the Houston Zoo is a special group as it is at the rodeo. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't you start out as a volunteer at the zoo?
I did. That's correct. I started out as a volunteer, oh gosh, back in, I guess, 2003 when I was still in college. So I kind of started out here as a volunteer to see what all it took to be a part of the zoo field. And yeah, I just fell in love with it, and I've been here ever since.
So did you start off as a young girl with a love of animals? Is that what led you in this direction?
Absolutely. I've always just had a really big love of animals, just any kind of animal, really. Just anything that I can spend time with animal-wise was a really big passion of mine. So yeah, that's how it all started.
All right. So I understand you may have a special guest there with you that might be able to join us. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. When we're talking about pollinators, obviously there's a lot of different variety of pollinators. And so one of our special guests today is Rainbow. He is one of our ambassador animals in the Children's Zoo. And joining us with Rainbow is his lovely trainer, Sarah, who's going to show him off a little bit while I give you guys some information about him and why he makes a really great pollinator. So he's going to say hi, hopefully, show off his wings. But Rainbow here is a red-sided eclectus parrot. And you can tell how wonderfully colorful he is. These guys, as you may have guessed, are not native to Texas or the United States, but they are actually from New Guinea and surrounding islands, which is off the coast of Australia. Now, the reason these guys make really great pollinators is because of the types of foods that they eat. They eat a lot of fruits, and they eat nuts and some seeds, and they also love flowering plants. So they will eat buds of flowering plants, and that helps with pollination. So as they're going from plant to plant to collect all these yummy foods that they love, they're transferring that pollen and they're helping with pollination. So they're just an amazing contribution to pollinators. And it's just not one you would typically think of, but they still do a wonderful job.
So that beautiful, beautiful parrot is an ambassador animal at the Houston Zoo. Can you talk about all the zoos all the animals at the zoo? And I know you have a lot of specific ambassador animals, but really aren't all the animals at the zoo ambassadors for their species?
Oh, absolutely. All of our animals are kind of speaking for their wild counterparts. And we just have a few special ones like Rainbow that can come out and do wonderful things like this, get a little bit up close and personal, but all of them, including the animals and their habitats, are definitely ambassadors.
And when you talk about the animals and how they represent their species in the zoo, I know that it's part of the message and the mission of the Houston Zoo to educate the public on conservation. And pollinators is one of those. When you look at what you want the public to take away information-wise from the story of pollinators at the zoo or any of the conservation projects that the Houston Zoo promotes, what are some of those messages? What are some of the crucial things you want our viewers to understand today?
Well, I think our messaging, specifically when it comes to pollinators, we just want to basically educate people about the importance of pollinators. A lot of them, especially the insects, tend to get labeled as pests. And so we want to educate them and let them know that pollinators are a great thing. They're vital to a healthy ecosystem, healthy habitats. And that the more they learn about them, hopefully the more information they share with other people about how important they are. And so we do definitely a lot of education just about pollinators in general. As people get more excited about pollinators, we encourage them to plant native Texas pollinator plants at their own home, whether it be in a backyard or in a potted plant. If you just have a small patio, every little bit helps when it comes to plants to help support our pollinators.
So once again, I want to remind our viewers, thanks for tuning in, but also that our guest today on Ag Chat Live is Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo. It's World Bee Day and we're talking pollinators. I want to thank everyone for their comments. Also, could we get a bunch of thumbs up in our comment section for Rainbow the parrot? What a beautiful bird, truly beautiful species.
It's amazing.
And also want to say a shout out to those watching and viewing from all over the place. We've got a very big viewership today, Michelle. You're doing great and getting a great message out. One of the things that, and I want to encourage everyone to continue to give us your favorite zoo animal in the comments and also where you're watching from. We've got Southern India represented, Santa Barbara, Santa Fe, Channelview, people from all over watching and tuning in. When we talk about pollinators and what the zoo is doing, that's a specific pollinator garden behind you. But for example, the new Texas wetlands, I guess it's still new to me, but when you're when the zoo is constructing a new habitat in a new area, do you look to create specific I know animals and plants that are tied to native species and that will be supportive of pollinators?
Absolutely. The Texas wetland habitat is one of our newest, so it is still pretty new. It's only about a year old. And a lot of great minds and ideas went into creating that space to make it, as much of a replica as a Texas wetland as possible. But it's really not even a replica. It's an actual Texas wetlands habitat. And of course, a lot of, things go into that, creating that, but definitely drawing in native wildlife was part of that planning process. And so as far as plant goes, it doesn't have not only terrestrial plants, but aquatic plants being a wetland. And so that was taken into account and hopefully, putting in as much diversity as we could. And as far as pollinator plants, there's a couple of, I think, more familiar ones. We have reed plants, which draw in a lot of dragonflies, and then water lilies are really great for pollinators, and they're just kind of all over the wetlands.
So for those who may have tuned in a little bit late, I want to go back to the conversation about native species plants. So specifically, Michelle, if someone wants to build a garden at their home, in their yard, that will be the best to help attract pollinators and support pollinators, how would you suggest going about that? And what are some of the plants that you might suggest?
Sure. If you are new to pollinators and planting, don't Don't be nervous. A lot of people are, and I was at one point. So we actually have a couple of things to help with that. We have a pollinator plant guide that is on our website that we have created. It has a list of about 10 or 15 most common Texas native plants that you can find either at your local nursery or your local garden center. And it has not only the name, the common name, the genus species name of the plant, because sometimes both are on the labels, but it also has a picture of the plant, which is super helpful for people kind of just starting off. And it has what it needs as far as care, water, how much water and how much sunlight, things like that. So that is super helpful. Again, it's on our website. And you can print it out and take it with you. And a lot of times the people at the nurseries are really helpful as well. But in order to have a really great pollinator garden, get started at your own home, some of the specific plants we would suggest are salvia, like we mentioned, which is this purple flower right behind me. Any type of salvia is super attractive to pollinators, and they do love them. The bees, especially behind me, are super active with our salvia. And any lantana, there's actually a Texas lantana. All of the lantanas are really attractive to pollinators. Sunflowers, the Turk's cap, which is the red one that I mentioned earlier. So there are quite a few, and any of those will help get you started on a really nice pollinator garden.
So I'll tell you from my own personal experience, it was probably 6 years or so ago when I decided to create my own pollinator garden. And I was at a garden center and I decided to Google best plants for pollinator garden Houston. And the first site that came up was the Houston Zoo, which made me very proud.
Perfect.
So I would encourage everyone to do that. But I would also say we've got people like Scarlett, who's watching from Ellinger, Robbie, who's watching from up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We've got Drew in Nashville. So we've got a lot of people from all over the place. The plants that you mentioned may not be best for those who are watching outside of the Houston area. What do you suggest for those watching, even from India, how they go about choosing the best plants for their garden?
Oh, that's a great question. Kind of like you did, David. I think just doing some research is super helpful. The internet, again, is very informative. But hopefully, again, like I said, if you visit a nursery, a lot of the attendants there just are super knowledgeable about plants in general and can help guide you in that way to help find the best plants for your area.
And when you look at a garden like the one behind you, so lush and so vibrant, how long does it take? Obviously, I know that one's a couple of years old at least, but how long does it take you to get the garden to where you're really producing and getting the pollinators to come to you?
Well, not too long at all. It just depends on the plants that you plant. A lot of the native plants will be seasonal, so they will bloom seasonally, which is great because that is actually blooming at a time when the pollinators are most active and they need all the extra nutrients. But it just kind of depends on the plant, but it really doesn't take very long. I'd say, within a few months that you would have a nice garden that you can help sustain and build on.
Hey, I know that we need to let you get back to work and taking care of those beautiful, amazing animals at the Houston Zoo. But real quickly, because you mentioned in your introduction, Michelle, that your role is in the Children's Zoo. And the Children's Zoo is one of my favorite spots there. But you've got something in common with the rodeo and what we do here is you've got some farm animals that people can come see every day at the Houston Zoo when you reopen. Can you tell us just a quick little bit about the Children's Zoo?
Absolutely. Our Children's Zoo is just an amazing place. We have a huge diversity of animals within the Children's Zoo. And you're right, the farm animals are just amazing. They're one of the few animals at the zoo that you can be interactive with, you can get hands-on, and the animals enjoy it, the guests enjoy it. So we have a miniature zebu. His name is Zamir, and he's a bovine breed of cattle, but he loves being brushed, and we actually have brushes out for guests to brush him, so he just loves that. We have a llama, a Jacob sheep, a miniature pig, and of course, all of the wonderful goats in the goat yard who are definitely missing our guests right now.
Well, we're so appreciative of you being with us today, Michelle, and joining us on Ag Chat. We're so proud of our relationship that the Houston Rodeo Rodeo Houston has with the Houston Zoo as a grant recipient and all the great work you're doing for education and the public. We're anxiously awaiting, as you all are, when the zoo is reopened to the public. What are some ways that the public can support the Houston Zoo, not just in this time, but all the time?
Well, in more common and I guess normal times, just coming to the Houston Zoo is the best way to support us. Our guests coming in the doors helps us to stay functional. It helps us support us and our animals, which, you know, is just amazing. And it helps to save animals in the wild just by visiting the Houston Zoo. But right now, in this time where it's a little different, the best way to help support the zoo is actually to help contribute to our emergency fund. And that's at houstonzoo.org. You can find some information there about it. But that is something that anyone can do in this time to help support the Houston Zoo. Awesome.
Well, we hope that our viewers and those watching do. And for me, I'm very appreciative of you taking the time out to spend with us today on World Bee Day. Since it is World Bee Day, and I know it's a passion of yours, any final thoughts on pollinators for our viewers?
No, likewise. I just had so much fun today. Thank you guys. My big message would be to hopefully everyone learn a little bit about pollinators and spread the love, and, you know, let everyone know how important they are for not only us, but just the environment in general.
Great. Thank you. That's Michelle Castle from the Houston Zoo. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. I'm David Brady. I've been filling in for Dr. Chris Bowman, who I promise will be back very soon. He's been tied up doing some things. He starts his new role as president and CEO on Monday. I also want to, I'm a little remiss in not having mentioned at the start of the program our conversation last week with Houston Food Bank President and CEO Brian Green. And for those of you who reached out and asked to volunteer or support Houston Food Bank, it's houstonfoodbank.org. Hope you'll enjoy what the conversation was last week and support them as well. And again, thanks to Michelle. And if you're looking to support the Houston Zoo, again, it's houstonzoo.org. We're all anxiously awaiting the moment the public is let back into the zoo and we can enjoy the pollinator gardens, but also all the amazing animals that are there as well. I'm David Brady. Thanks again for tuning in this morning, and look forward to talking to you very soon. Stay healthy and stay safe.